Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Thank you for taking the time to come and be part of TEDxSnoIsleLibraries 2020. All around our region and state, across the country and around the globe, people just like you and me are hungry for ideas and information. We all want to know more, to imagine, and to understand. And TEDx events are organized to provide opportunities to connect us with ideas worth spreading. The TED organization has granted a license allowing Sno-Isle Libraries to independently organize this local TEDx event. Because at its core, your public library is all about providing you access to ideas and information. We've worked with some amazing individuals from our region to share some of these ideas with you. Now, the really hard work to make this happen has come from each featured speaker and all those who've worked behind the scenes. So we invite you to sit back and imagine you are sitting in the largest theater ever. In this virtual space, we are choosing to be safe, exercising our social distance, and other members of the audience are also choosing to be present. We are all expectant, ready to think deeply, and we are reimagining the quantum connections between ideas and realities. And now, on with the show.
Hello, and welcome to TEDxSnoIsleLibraries 2020. I'm your host, Phil Klein, and in this online event, we'll be premiering a TEDx talk and holding a conversation with the speaker to dig deeper into his ideas for greater understanding. With me are also a team of moderators and a co-host to provide any support we may need. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and to explore these ideas worth spreading. Throughout this hour, you're invited to ask questions in the comments section of the environment you may be in, whether it's the Zoom webinar or the YouTube Live or the Facebook Live environment. And we will try to get to as many of those questions as possible during the hour. And if something strikes you or inspires you, feel free to share that as well. Our speaker today is John Fahey. John, welcome and thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
It's so great to be with you again. To our audience, let me just say that John is someone who has just found an extraordinary way to weave vacations into his life's work. And as a leader of the Vacation Angel Network and in a number of other capacities, he finds a way to wring meaning out of experiences that many of us would only find either fun or amazing or one of those kinds of trips we'd prefer to forget. Thank you so much for taking the time. And John, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided you wanted to give this talk and why it was important to do that?
Well, first of all, I've always been a huge fan of TEDx. And so maybe it was a lifelong dream of mine to be on TEDx after I started watching them. And I really like TEDx because it's a kind of a neat platform to get ideas out that maybe would never get out otherwise. And so since we started doing this Vacation Angel Network, it's really been a fantastic experience for me. And I suddenly thought, this is a neat thing to share. So I applied for the talk. When I got accepted, I was just absolutely ecstatic. And I'm really happy to be here to share what we're doing.
Well, thanks again. And I think, as you can all tell, John is someone who is passionate and energized, and he's also energizing. So let's go ahead and spend a little time getting to know John and his talk.
Each of us is here on the planet for a very limited amount of time. And I know that sounds like a big bummer, but it's actually not. It's actually kind of cool because it unites us all in a shared experience. We know that our lives are limited and precious, and so we understand that other people's lives are limited and precious as well. And it's within that limited time frame that we get to write our story, the story of our lives. So it's worth stopping from time to time to consider exactly what story it is that we're writing. In the end, what will the theme have been? And importantly, what will be the really, really cool scenes? Now, this is something that I've been thinking a lot about lately because recently the story of my life took a dramatic plot turn. In the past, when people have asked me what I do for a living, I like to say that I'm an author of books and a travel writer. And I like to say that I own a vacation rental business and a travel company. And that's all true, but it's a little misleading because my real job, my grown-up job for the last 22 years has been in finance, which means I've sat in front of a computer 10 hours a day, every day, staring at numbers. So you can see why I prefer to talk about writing books and about traveling. But also because those are my passions. I love stories, especially true stories. And I love traveling. I love vacations. In fact, I think that vacations are some of the most awesome things that people do. So it might surprise you to learn that the most amazing vacations in my life, vacations that have literally changed my life, are vacations that I didn't even go on. And that's because several years ago, I started an organization called the Vacation Angel Network. Now, the network is a group of vacation rental homeowners, and we open up our homes to families who are going through some kind of a hardship, like an injury or an illness. We started with families who had children being treated for pediatric cancer. And these treatments can last 12 months, sometimes 18 months. Most of that time spent in the hospital. And aside from being emotionally devastating, they're often financially devastating as well. So our idea was, after these kids were done with treatment and got to finally leave the hospital, we would just give them a chance to go on a free vacation, take a break, be together as a family, and just enjoy life. It was our hope that in the story of their lives, this would be a chance for them to turn the page and start a new chapter. And this whole idea really happened by chance. I encountered a family that was in this situation, and I said, I don't know if it'll help, but if you guys want, you're welcome to go stay in one of our houses. And they said, sure, and they did. And it wasn't a grand gesture on my part. It wasn't a huge sacrifice. I think it's possible the house might have sat empty anyways. But it was quickly apparent that for this family, it was a big moment in the story of their lives. And what I didn't know at the time was that this event was also going to be a big moment in the story of my life too, because it was really feel good. And I quickly realized it was something that I wanted to do more of. And so I did. I went out and I recruited some more vacation rental homeowners, and we started doing more vacations. And we started to donate our houses to auctions for charities and foundations that were kind of in keeping with our mission. And suddenly and quickly, we had this sort of thing that felt like it was making the world a little bit better place. And it was cool. So that happened. Now, you guys have all heard the saying that no good deed goes unpunished. So a few years after that, we were hosting a foster family with a foster mom, and she had 5 foster kids at one of our houses. And this was over in Lake Chelan in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. It's one of my favorite places on the planet. And my parents have a place there, so I happened to be there along with all my brothers and sisters and all of my nieces and nephews. I come from a big, crazy Irish Catholic family. Super fun, and it's in the afternoon and somebody raises the cocktail flag and I get my first delicious icy cold beer, about to crack it open, and suddenly the phone rings, and it's the foster mom. And she says, John, I'm so sorry to bother you, but none of the toilets in the house are working. Which, if you live the glamorous life of a vacation rental homeowner, this is not an uncommon call to get. So I'm like, fine, I hand my beer reluctantly back to my brother. I jump in the car, I go a few blocks up to the house, and I already know what the problem's gonna be. I know it's gonna be the septic pump in the cistern out in the yard. And I also know it's not gonna be fun. So I get there and I put on my gloves like a cowboy getting ready to ride a Bronco, because this is not my first septic system rodeo. And I open up the cistern and it's flooded. Now it's clear water, but it's sewer water and it stinks. So I take a deep breath and I reach down in, and water's all the way up to the edge of my gloves, and I knock loose the float pump and I come back up, deep breath, and all the water flows out. And I'm like, okay, great, problem solved. Now, the swimming pool is right in the yard there, and the mom and the kids are there, so I yell down to her, I say, hey, you should be all set now. Everything should be fine. And she goes, oh, great, thanks, but John, come down and meet the kids. Now, I just want to go take a shower, but I say, of course, yeah. So I walk down, and there's a little 10-year-old girl, and she's in the shallow end, and the mom says to her, Mary, tell John what you did. And I look over at her, and she is smiling. She is just beaming. And you can tell she is so proud of herself. And she says, I learned how to swim. And I say, oh, that's great. And I look back at the mom, and the mom says, she says, she's never been in a swimming pool before. She's never actually been in a swimsuit before. And I get a big lump in my throat. I'm getting one right now, and my eyes are watering up, but I can't do anything about it because I got the sewer water gloves on. And I look back at the mom, and she says, thank you. And tears just started streaming down my face. And you never know where you're going to be at a pivotal moment in your life. You never know what you're going to be doing. You never know what you're going to be wearing. But this was a pivotal moment in my life, because it was the moment when I realized that this is what I want. This should be a big part of my life. This is really what I want to do. And so I did. I ramped it up. I started recruiting more vacation rental homeowners, and we started doing more vacations. And importantly, we started teaming up with foundations that would nominate families for us to take on vacation and causes for us to support. And because these stories really resonated with people, especially stories of illness, these were stories about families showing great courage. They were stories of sadness, and they were stories of families in the fight of their life against an enemy that they didn't even provoke. And that really resonated with people. So we started getting on the news, and we started getting on local television programs. And if we posted on social media, these stories would really go. And that brought more people would start to call me and say, how can I help and how can I get involved? And suddenly, in an organic way, this thing really started to grow. There was a moment when I found myself on the phone with, there's a really great television program called Treehouse Masters, and very popular. It's got millions of viewers. And I found myself on the phone talking to the host, Pete Nelson. And he said, John, I love what you're doing. We have to get some of these kids out to my treehouse resort. And I said, sure. So suddenly we find ourselves out there. We have a family with a young cancer survivor. And Pete Nelson is this great gregarious guy, and he's there, and he is dancing with them, and they're laughing, and they're having the best time. And I'm standing there in this beautiful forest surrounded by tree houses watching this, and I just thought, this is extraordinary. And maybe that's not cool for a lot of people, but for me, a finance nerd who has spent probably way too much of his life in front of a computer, I thought it really was cool. I thought it was extraordinary. And so because of that, suddenly we had more people coming in, and we created a virtuous cycle. And I realized we really have something here. I would like to see what this could become. So after 22 years, I quit my job in finance and decided to pursue the Vacation Angel Network full-time and see what would become of it. Now, I think that was a great decision. But if I'm being honest, at first I wasn't so sure, because when we started doing this, we would have families that were done with treatment and they were leaving the hospital, and hopefully they were leaving the hospital forever. And when they came out, they would have a good time, and then they would continue on with their lives, and that would be the end of it. But now that we were teaming up with foundations and we were doing more vacations, I guess it was inevitable that we would start to encounter families that were going through an illness from which they were not going to recover. And we would encounter parents who were going to lose a child. We would meet moms that were ill, and maybe they weren't going to get better. And it hurts your heart a lot because these moms in particular, they weren't concerned about being sick or even about dying. All they were concerned about was that their young children were going to grow up without a mom. And I had a hard time with these stories, obviously. And I'm not proud of this, but there was a time when I thought to myself, maybe I've made a huge mistake. But that was a moment in time. And fortunately, I'm not in that space anymore. I'm in a space now where I get excited every day to get up and do what I do. And it wasn't one particular thing that got me through it. It was really three things. The first thing was getting a chance to see these families come together and really just have fun and celebrate life sort of reignited my passion for vacations and for stories. I think all of you guys will agree that vacations don't always go well. Sometimes they go spectacularly wrong, even comically wrong. But your worst vacations can end up being your best memories, and it's because of the stories. They become the stories of your family. And when an unexpected illness or injury befalls a family, they don't always have the opportunity to write those stories. And the story of every family is important. So for me, I get excited about the opportunity to just in a small way help these families to write their story. The second thing is I have been overwhelmed by the amount of generosity and the outpouring from people to help support our mission. We live in a time now where you can sometimes start to feel like the world is a cynical place. But after founding this organization and seeing how many people have called up and offered to support, to offer their homes, offer their time, offer their talent. And I want to emphasize, these aren't rich people offering their homes for a weekend in the Hamptons while they head off to Europe for 2 days. Most of the members of our network are small business owners in a very competitive industry. Some of them are struggling to make a go of it, and still they call and say, John, what can we do? How can we help? So there have been times when we have had more homes and vacations to offer than we have had families to give them to. And I would have never expected that. So I hope that makes you guys feel like we don't live in a cynical world, that we live in a wonderful world. I know it does for me. So the third thing is, and maybe the most poignant thing, happened when I was talking to a woman who's become a friend of mine. And she is the founder of an organization called the Ladybug House. And their mission is to create better palliative care for children who have terminal illnesses. They're hoping to create a better experience for kids as they come to the final months, weeks, and days of their lives. And I was talking to her one day and she told me her motto, and it really struck me. And their motto is this. She said, we can't always add days to their lives, but we can add life to their days. Each of us has a terminal diagnosis. We're all dying. We're just doing it on a different time frame. And it's within that limited time frame that we get to write our stories. For me, it has been an honor and a privilege to be a small part of helping families to write their stories, no matter how long or short those stories may be. It's been humbling for me to witness families show grace and courage in the face of overwhelming adversity. Earlier, when I said I think vacations are some of the most awesome things that people do, I think maybe you'll see now I was being a little intentionally misleading. The awesome things that I have witnessed are not people going on vacation. The awesome things that I have witnessed are people I don't even know offering their homes to people they don't even know on our network, and not just offering their homes. Some of these people have gone out of their way to make these vacations truly exceptional. The founding of the Vacation Angel Network has become one of the great joys of my life. I've learned that the value of things that you give often far surpass the sacrifice that you make in giving them. In the end, it's really no sacrifice at all, because if you can find a way to leverage your time and your talents and your assets to help somebody improve the story of their life, you're going to find that it dramatically improves the story of your life as well. And if you can find a way to help somebody add life to their days, no matter how many days they may have left, I think you will find, as I have, that you will add an incredible amount of life to your days as well. And that is something that I would wish for all of you. So thank you for letting me share my story.
Thank you so much, John. That is truly an inspiring story. Thank you so much for adding life to our days, and for sharing how so many people are adding life to the days of people they may not even know. Tell me, what is it that is adding life to your days?
Right now.
Sure.
It's, I guess maybe since I started doing this, what's really been an unexpected and fantastic surprise for me is the new people I have met, truly inspiring people, doing really great things. And so it's kind of exciting for me to be in this new community and really watch people go out of their way to make other people's lives great. Every day I get up, I'm like, well, this is nice what we're doing, but I'm really inspired by some of the things that I see around our community and some of the things that I see happening.
I mean, it really suggests that maybe we're living in a kind of giving network, right? Where people find ways to give what it is they have and find people to receive it. And that this is the virtuous cycle that makes for the meaning we want to have in our lives.
I love that term, virtuous cycle. That's kind of how I felt about this whole process. And I also, I always feel like I think all of us sort of innately, we want to help out when we can, when we see a thing. And I'm feeling more like, because of the times, I think people are kind of thinking, well, I'm always planning on helping someone, but when is that time? I'm starting to feel like I see around our communities that people are feeling like this is the time. It seems like people are really reaching out and helping each other.
Yeah, I remember in one of our planning conversations around this event, you suggested that maybe this is a more broad idea than even focusing on vacation rentals, but really just thinking about how we all have something to give and to really reflect on what is it that we may have to give someone else. Are there some things from a different arena that you've heard people offering that weren't what you had originally visioned, that people are offering and giving?
I actually just talked to someone today, coincidentally, and he is working with, it just so happens that in our area in Seattle, Children's Hospital is a big hub for a lot of these families that come. And I was just speaking with someone today who is working hard to create a new nonprofit that helps people to travel here when they have illnesses, and Children's Hospital is the place they need to come, and working with different corporations to try and provide free travel. And so that's just another example of, there's assets out there, sometimes underutilized assets, and any idea where you can try and find that unused asset and match it with a need, I think is exciting and really a neat avenue for making the world a little bit better place.
Yeah, I think it really is a transformative way to really just reallocate how you think about what you're doing, just to think about what are the underutilized assets that could be of value to someone else. It's powerful. And because Children's is I believe it's a regional center, so facility for people from Alaska and from many distant places.
Montana, Idaho, Oregon, Washington. Yeah, they draw from all the Pacific Northwest region, kind of.
Yeah. That's really a powerful idea and a similar concept to what you were sharing. What are you planning and thinking to do in the coming weeks or months how is your thinking evolving and growing in relation to this work?
Well, of course, COVID-19 has presented some kind of interesting challenges. We had a whole host of vacations that were planned for this summer, but unfortunately, a lot of our, candidates and families have some, they're immune compromised in many ways, especially as they're finishing up with treatment. And so we have done a little bit of a shift. We had to cancel some vacations, unfortunately. So we've been exploring new ways that we can help, in line with our core mission. We've been providing funds and resources to help families to be housed while they're here getting treatment. And we've shifted our focus to maybe not always children, but sometimes adults who have been, in a battle with cancer, and then they're through it, and giving them a chance to go and take some vacations with their family and just get the family together. We've been working to do a lot of different things that I had not initially contemplated doing. And so in a way, although COVID-19 has been difficult for all of us, it's also opened up some new avenues for us, which I think is kind of exciting.
Yeah, so times of disruption can be times when people can think outside the box because the box they thought they were in is totally different.
Right, reassess, yeah.
Yeah, so and it would be great to hear from the audience as well, if you have any ideas for yourself about how you think you might want to see things that are underutilized assets, and what those might be, and how those could be shared with people who may not have them and could benefit from them. I'm wondering, how do you think people might rethink the way they plan their own vacations? And you're a very experienced traveler and vacationer yourself. Are there ways this has shifted how you've taken vacation and how you've looked at the vacations you take?
How I look at the vacations I take. I of course, I'm a vacation nut, a travel nut, and an enthusiast. But yeah, I mentioned in my talk, I think the real focus of vacations, in my mind, it's always about family. And I said in the talk, even your vacations don't always go perfectly well. I remember my own family, big family. My parents, they bundled 6 of us into a station wagon and drove us from Seattle to North Dakota. And, that wasn't 3 days of family bliss, I can tell you, but it remains one of my favorite memories growing up. These are, my childhood memories. And so when we look back on it, we always laugh. We think about the different things we've done. Our vacations, as when I was growing up, were as much fun as they were catastrophe. But in the end, you look back on those catastrophes and think that's the stories of our family. It's really fun. So I really am always focusing on, family vacations. How can you get together? How can you create experiences where the family is engaged with each other, and enjoying every moment they can together.
And thinking of how that contributes to the story, both of the family and of each person in the family. And
exactly.
You're making those memories that become, in a way, the biography of the family.
Exactly. Yeah. Great stories that you tell for the rest of your life. So, yeah.
Wow. So tell me, I understand you're something of a Northwest travel expert. Can you tell us, there's a story behind that? How did you get that title?
I wrote a book. I'm actually here in Lake Chelan, which is my favorite place in the planet. I mentioned that. And I wrote a really popular book about Lake Chelan. We ended up selling thousands of copies. It's a super funny book. And because of that, people started calling and asking me to do interviews whenever the topic of Chelan would come up. So I'd end up on TV. And at some point, they started referring to me as a Northwest travel expert. And I've written several books about the area. And at first I was like, well, okay, Northwest travel expert, I'll take it. But then after a while, I started to realize, yeah, I really do. I've done a ton of research. I know a lot about this region. I love this region. I think it's the greatest place on the planet. And so when I was getting invited to do these things, I guess I had a pretty good wealth of knowledge, and that sort of grew. So now occasionally I'm kind of a go-to guy when people are focusing on different parts of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and want to do radio and TV shows, that kind of a thing.
Wow. So I guess you're the person to go to if Stehekin or Holden Village or I don't know what, Mazama.
A font of knowledge about Lake Chelan, I'll tell you that. I've done probably as much research as anyone, and the Cascades as well. I think the Cascade Mountains and everything about them are extraordinary, and I've spent a lot of time up exploring them. So,
well, my dental hygienist is going to climb Glacier Peak this very weekend. So
fantastic. Yeah,
people are taking advantage of doing this. What was that?
I said that's quite an outing. It's one of the most remote volcanoes we have here in Washington. So tell your hygienist good luck. I think that's going to be an epic trip.
Yes, I think it will too. Yeah. It'll be the last of the volcanoes for her to climb because she's already done the other. So
fantastic, exactly.
People are getting out there despite the COVID and
wow.
So
I think it not despite because of COVID. There really have just been a tremendous amount of people who are getting out and exploring this beautiful region. I get excited about that. I get excited watching people's posts and seeing pictures and learning about new places that I want to go see. So yeah.
Thinking about people who've been joining the Vacational Angel Network, what stories are you hearing from them?
From the homeowners who donate their homes?
Homeowners, people who may have a second home or who have a vacation rental that they have shared. Because this probably takes on a different flavor depending on which family this might be and what their kinds of experiences. I'd just love to hear kind of the range of kinds of things you've been hearing.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. This COVID-19 thing, it hit this particular industry really hard. A lot of houses were shut down, of course, but unlike a lot of other industries where people have a job and maybe they're paying themselves a paycheck or something like that, a lot of the people in this industry, they just sort of they rent their houses and then they pay their mortgage and they kind of build equity. So they didn't really, any relief that was out there for a lot of other businesses was not available for many of the houses that are in our network. And I actually get a little emotional about this because there were a lot of people I knew who really got into some dire straits. I was talking to one particular guy whose business wasn't doing well and his vacation rentals weren't doing well. And I said, we have a vacation scheduled in September. He was offering his house. I said, if you need me to reschedule or find a new location so that you can recoup some revenue, by all means do it. And he said, John, I think I'm going to lose the house anyway. So I might as well do something good with it while I still have it. And I was like, a big lump in my throat. So, I have to say that the people in our network are extraordinary. They just keep giving and giving and giving. And so just to be witness to that has also been extremely inspiring for me. And I can see in talking with them that it's, for them, it's also very gratifying. That's why I say it's just a neat, virtuous cycle. The families that get to go, it's extraordinary for them. The homeowners who contribute and help, I get the sense that they are just, happy to be able to be a part of this thing. So in that sense, I guess that makes me excited about what we're doing as well.
Yeah. And, I really appreciate you not sugarcoating it. There are a lot of difficult turning points that you've discussed in your talk. And certainly with COVID-19, there are extraordinary hardships that people may see once in a generation, once in a century. I mean, we don't even know the extent of it. So, for us to be playing a meaningfully supportive role in whatever capacity that can be, I don't think you're asking anyone to do what is, unreasonable and, unsupportable for themselves.
Right.
But even with that, there's a lot people can do. I'm curious, you've had some challenging turning points. You mentioned doubting your original decision to potentially stay committed to this.
Yeah.
What did you do when you started to face those real difficult moments that helped you get through?
Well, first of all, I maybe I cringe a little bit when you say, difficult moments because, I deal with a lot of people who are in really legitimately difficult moments. So maybe for me, I guess you would say it was emotionally difficult to deal with that. And that was something maybe I didn't expect. Because when we started doing this, it was all very feel good. It was only when I sort of took it on and it grew that we started getting into some of these stories that were sad. So, emotionally difficult versus what a lot of these families have gone through is, a whole different thing. And I think if you ask me how I got through it, it would be because I got to watch how these families dealt with real crises in their life. And it's just, you never get this sense of woe is me from any of them. You really get this sense of we are a family. we are battling to get through this. And, if you're not inspired by that, then, you're not very inspirable. So for me to watch that, that just made me think, yeah, I'm doing the right thing. I want to keep doing this, and, of course, there's going to be some sad moments. That's part of the gig. And maybe just having the opportunity to I'll give you an example, Phil. We had a vacation that we planned that I was really excited about. I got a little emotionally invested in it. And then we got the call that the young kid, he was a teenager, had taken a turn for the worse. And we had to cancel that trip. And then actually right before I did the talk, I found out that he sadly had passed away. And so now, instead of doing this trip for this kid that I was, really excited about, we're working to do a bereavement trip for the family. And so, obviously there's some sadness there, but you have to kind of take a step back and say, well, given the situation, is there, all of us, when we hear something sad, we want to help, we want to be able to do something. So yeah, I'm not excited that we're doing a bereavement trip, but I do feel like, given the circumstances, at least there's things that we can do, to help in any way that we can. So, I don't know.
Yeah. So I appreciate your, self-effacing attitude about your own emotions versus the reality of other people's hardship. But, in a sense, our emotions are really how we deal with the most difficult things we have to face. And as you described earlier, it so much comes down to how are we going to tell the story that we can tell within the limited lives we get to live, and how will we tell the stories of those we love, and how will we move forward, empowered and informed by those stories, and how do those collectively become the story of our family, of our community, maybe even of our region or our state or our nation. Those are very, very powerful ideas. And they keep us from being stuck in despair, and they allow us to live forward together with hardship, which is one of life's most powerful gifts. So, I just can't thank you enough for kind of raising those challenges to such a pointed level of awareness. We can all live better with those kinds of ideas. I'm curious, with this idea that people add life to their days, or we play a role in adding life to one another's days, what do you imagine in a world where everyone around us is adding life to one another's days?
What do I imagine the world? A unicorn flying in front of a sunset, rainbows flying out of its horn. Yeah.
Okay. A gorilla high-fiving a shark in front of an explosion.
Exactly.
It sounds too unrealistic.
No, it's not. I actually had the book I wrote about Lake Chelan. I have with me, and there's a little section in there that I found when I was researching, and it was written by one of the early settlers of Lake Chelan, and his name's Christopher Robinson Schweitzer. And I just stumbled across this quote. It made it in the book, but I think about it often. And this was him talking about early life here in Lake Chelan. And he said, in every community, there were both joys and sorrows, and Chelan was no different. I remember that the concern of one was the concern of all. There were no organized charities, but if anyone was in need in Chelan, that need was supplied. And, that's small town life 125 years ago. But it kind of, maybe that's what I would imagine. If everyone is helping people, if the concern of one is the concern of all, truly, then there's some great opportunities for people to empathize, to help in any way that they can. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's a good way, clearly we live in a little bit of a polarized, divisive time. Maybe that's a good way to help rebuild tight communities, in the world.
Those words remind me of Oso and the tragedy there, how communities have come together in those kinds of times of hardship. I'm curious, how can others get involved in your work, and how do you see your network growing?
Well, especially lately, our network has really expanded as kind of word of what we're doing is getting out. So, of course, if there's any vacation rental homeowners out there, we would love to have them on board. and grow the amount of places that we can do. If people, I guess the real easy way that people can help is one of the people in our network, they get to post their homes on our Vacation Angel Network site. And so I'm always trying to promote those. I mean, they do so much for us. I'm always trying to help promote those businesses. So, if anyone, especially now, is looking to get away or go on a vacation, I would love it if they went to our Vacation Angel Network site and then help support the businesses that support us. And it's actually, when you say virtuous cycle, it's kind of a neat thing because, unlike we're just trying, we have a core mission. We're not trying to become one of these billion-dollar companies or anything like that. So people who book on our site, they book directly with the vacation homeowner and they don't have to pay those booking fees. That frees up money for them to go do more fun stuff on their vacation. And I think it also helps promote, it helps helps bring them more customers. So the people who are in our network, they end up getting more vacations. That's the virtual cycle I'm talking about. So how do we build it? Well, I'd love to have more vacation rental homeowners get in touch with us. And so we could offer up, and you don't have to offer up your house. Some of them offer up money to help fund the trips that these families take. Some of them just offer their time. And then, I would love for people who are taking a vacation to jump on our site and support our businesses. And when I say virtuous cycle, where do I see this going? It's such a neat thing. I watch it growing. I watch the excitement and enthusiasm, and I don't see any reason why we couldn't be doing this coast to coast. That would be, maybe I'm ambitious or naive, but that would be what I would love to see happen with this project.
Well, as an industry, the travel industry has often faced criticisms that it tends to take things from the community and not give back. And for there to be a kind of way that going on a vacation can actually be helpful to others, I think that's a powerful idea, even if it's, not in, let's say, an ecotourism trip where you're, going to do service, which is another whole, arena and a way that people can travel and contribute. This is powerful.
It is. And we, in that vein too, what I really think is neat, because of the COVID-19, we were looking for different ways that we could help. And we have a pretty good presence here in Lake Chelan. Yeah. And our network was even helping contribute to the local Chelan food bank as so many people were put out of work by the tourist crisis. Mm. And so in that way, to your point, not just taking, but really trying to be a partner in the communities where we operate and offer these homes for people. So
great. Well, let's turn to some of the questions that we're getting. A lot of them are coming in here. So this question is for you, John. Are the property owners who participate in providing vacations, largely 1%ers? Your talk shatters the popular notion that those who have a lot are selfish and never want to help others. Were you surprised that you were able to attract others to this noble and meaningful service?
So the first part about the 1%er, I would say, absolutely not. Many of the members of our network, this is what they do for a living. And so, certainly there are, the 1%ers probably aren't renting out their house. They just have two or three homes. The people that we work with are really, this is what they do. They're all very passionate about vacations. They're in this business to try and provide vacations for people, and they're trying to make a living doing it. And it's a competitive business. Some of them, maybe this is their second business. Some of them, maybe this is their hope for retirement, is you rent for a few years and you can pay this house off, and then that could be your retirement. But no, I mean, these are really salt of the earth people, has been my experience. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah.
Another question for you. Someone on YouTube asks, we have so many friends with vacation homes. How can they get involved? Maybe you can be a little more specific about what they should do as steps.
Reach out to us. Go to our Vacation Angel Network site. Take a look at what we're doing and how we're structured. And, if you have some free time, or if this is something that speaks to you, we'd love to be able to offer your house or other ways that you might help. And, there's certainly one of the neat things about teaming up with foundations is we really have a broad reach of people who really could use a vacation. This would really be an important thing for them and for their family. So any way that we can get more vacation rentals into the fold, I would love. So reach out to our website, contact us. It'll come right to me, and you'll probably get a call from me 8 minutes later. That's how much I want to get people on the site. So.
We're fearlessly setting a high bar. Okay,
Sure,
great.
yeah.
Can you tell us what the web address is?
It's vacationangelnetwork.com.
Okay, vacationangelnetwork.com. And people can just actually, there's a form they can fill out, or just
sure.
a link.
It says,
something
contact us.
Contact us. Okay, great.
And call me, you know.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Just trying to translate for folks here.
I've got the phone with me all the time. That's the vacation rental homeowners creed. So,
and it's, you must have a little bit of the gregarious and socially warm personality in you. You seem to light up when you know how available you are to others.
Yeah, well, that's the neat thing about this, getting into doing this new business. In the old days, I'm just sitting on my computer staring at numbers all day long. Maybe one of the joys of this business is just meeting so many different people, talking with people, interacting. I like that.
That's so great. That's so great. Yeah, you get your people connections through that. Barb on Zoom asks, do you ever document the stories of these great vacations? Are you sharing them via a blog, or do you plan to write a book or do a podcast at some point?
I probably should. I would call this a startup, so I'm in that kind of mode. So comes time. I have a blog on our website. It's not updated. We do have a lot of our stories that get on local television, so that gets our stories out. And a lot of our stories, I guess that you would say that a health crisis is kind of a private thing. Mm-hmm. So certainly if families welcome us in to film their stories, we're happy to do that, and we'll push those stories out on our Facebook page. Which also, please, everyone, like our Facebook page, because that's a good way to get up there. So we'll share stories on our Facebook page and that kind of thing. But also, many of the vacations are just, families quietly going off to be together, and and that's really what we are all about. If they'll let us tell the stories, we're happy to do it because it helps spread the word, and we love that. And as I mentioned, a lot of these stories really do resonate with people. But if they don't want to, if they just want to go and have some private time together, certainly that happens a lot too.
Mm-hmm. Here's a comment and another question. Susie on Zoom shares, I work with homeless youth at Cocoon House in Snohomish County, Washington. And the youth there are 12 to 17 years old, and some are parenting teens. Mm-hmm. These vacations sound like something the kids would really enjoy. Many of these kids haven't had those kinds of experiences before. Is, this type of vacation stay recipients in your network, and do they fit a profile that you could help serve? And if so, should they just reach out on your website, or how would they reach you?
I think you said Susie, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. The story I told during the TED Talk, I actually got choked up again when I was watching myself tell it, which was ridiculous. But, that was several years ago when we had a foster family out that couldn't afford it. So it's something we've definitely done in the past. And it's actually something that we would probably really look at closely now because, as I mentioned, a lot of the immune compromised families can't necessarily take the trips. And mm-hmm. So definitely reach out to me, I don't want to, we don't really find ourselves in a box of what we can and can't do. We want to give people who wouldn't be able to have vacations a great vacation. So definitely reach out and we'll talk.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Another comment question. It seems that John is emphasizing a much better world built on the personal and social transformations, which come by sharing what we have with someone who doesn't have it, and also through the appreciation of what is shared, received, and enjoyed. It sounds like another path towards true community, towards a true community of caring souls.
Oh, I love that. I wish I had written that.
Well, now it's recorded.
Sure, yeah.
You'll be able to.
I'll go back and maybe I'll put that on the website. So thank you for sharing that. I guess that's what we would aspire to do if that we would aspire to do that. So.
Wow. Yes, that really does put a beautiful, cap on what it is that you've shared. And it's so powerful how listeners can amplify what it is that we say. I've always thought of our particular audience at TEDx as an audience of power listeners who can take what they hear and then transform that listening into action. And you're giving us so many great ways for us to think about how we can do that. I'm curious, what are some thoughts that you have about where you would like to go from here? You mentioned expanding the network. Are there further thoughts that you have that you'd want to give to our audience to think about, how they might think through their own ideas in relation to this?
Their own ideas, how they might, I would say, for me, we've been doing this for several years, but it wasn't the full focus of my life. I had my other job, and, we would do it. And it was only over a period of time, as it started to get bigger and bigger, and maybe people became aware of it, that it became big enough that I had the opportunity to pursue this, full time. And so I guess I would say, start small. Find something that you are like or passionate about, and then try and incorporate some way that you can kind of help, share or create community around it. And then start small, build and build and build. And if that's something that, speaks to you, maybe later down the line, you'll have a chance to make it a bigger part of your life.
That's fantastic. John, do you have a sense of what it is that you'd most like to leave our broader, wider audience with?
Well, I guess, maybe I hope the talk kind of speaks for itself a little bit. But I want to reemphasize, even since I filmed the talk, which was a little while ago, the amount that doing this, that finding ways to give, can really affect your own life in ways that you would have never expected. Just by chance today, I was talking to a guy named Tony Bristol. A friend of mine said, you have to meet this guy named Tony Bristol. And I scheduled a call with him, and he is a cancer survivor. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer about a year ago. And he said to me, I thank God for blessing me with cancer. And I was just taken back by that. I'm like, you have to explain that better. And he says, I am feeling great now. I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, terminal cancer. And by all rights, I shouldn't be here right now. And so I am feeling good. I feel that I have beat this, but I feel like every day I wake up happy to be alive and excited to take on the day because of this. It has reignited his relationship with his family and reignited his passion for life. And I just sat there and thought, well, how inspiring for the rest of us. What do we need to make every day wake up and feel like this might be the last day of your life? How do we get out and enjoy it, as much as we can? So that I would have never heard that story. There are so many people, things that I would have never met, places I would have never gone, traveled to, that are all a result of just this changing the direction of my life and trying to find a way to, to give, to help in small ways. I can't emphasize how much more I have benefited personally from it, way more than what I feel I have given. So if that encourages people to maybe consider how they might go out and work, to make the world a better place, then that would make me feel good too. So that's.
Yeah, the gift that you give may ripple outwards and inwards more deeply than you can possibly imagine.
Well put, yeah.
John Fahey, thank you so much for joining us. Yes. To our audience, thank you for being with us. To our producers who have helped to make this event possible, thank you so much. To our sign language interpreters and to our technical crew that made this all possible. Thank you so much for making today happen. And we will be closing the event. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you may be.
TEDxSnoIsleLibraries 2020 has been made possible through the generous support of corporate and community-based organizations who believe in the power of ideas and information. We'd like to thank these organizations for partnering with us. Coastal Community Bank, serving the financial needs of customers throughout Western Washington. Coastal Community Bank, where community is not just their middle name, it's how they do business. Community Transit of Snohomish County, providing public transportation alternatives and solutions which help people get from where they are to where they want to be. Overdrive, always innovating to help libraries transform by providing digital content such as ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, and video for public libraries. Washington Energy Services, providing heating, cooling, and other service solutions to help Puget Sound residents save energy and live better. And our founding partner, the Sno-Isle Libraries Foundation, committed to mobilizing people and resources to expand the reach of Sno-Isle Library services, promote civic engagement, and foster a lifetime of learning.